Welcome to Balder's Kitchen, where the magic's cooked up. This is guide number 5. So a bit like the previous guide, we're going to be looking at military units, what counters what. But this guide's more about levels 3 and 4. So let's go to the Rebel Alliance tech tree. Now, thing at levels 3 and particularly level 4 is that it starts to become a big issue what civ you're playing. So at level 2, across all the civs, they're quite similar at level 2, but level 3, particularly level 4, you start to realise that your civ is good at certain things like troops or mechs, or and often can be really, really bad at other ones, unless you've got a civ that's quite generic. So bearing that in mind, just with troops, similar to before, your mounted troopers are good against those slow-moving heavy things where you can get within their minimum range and attack them in melee. So they're good against the mech destroyers, great against artillery, and against assault mechs. They're still good against Jedi, but just bear in mind they can start to get converted by Jedi Knights at the high levels and that kind of thing. Laser troopers, generically, they're just quite good. They're cheap and cheerful, but they're very good at taking down mounties, which might be trying to get to your artillery and mech destroyers and that kind of thing. Now, grenade troopers, I think they've always suffered a bit as a unit because people aren't really too sure how to use them. They're really specific in taking down mechs, particularly strike mechs. So I'm going to recommend something, a way to use them with laser troopers. They're kind of quite good generically, but their weakness is strike mechs. So if you have a laser trooper army and you put in a sprinkling of grenade troopers, so don't go over the top, but just put in some grenade troopers into that army, then the grenade troopers make up for the weaknesses of the laser troopers with regard to mechs. So, like, for example, you're tech level 2 and your opponent's going tech level 3. Once you see them hit tech level 3, you might think, oh gosh, maybe some mechs are going to be coming my way. So a way of strengthening your army until you reach tech level 3 yourself is just to throw in a few grenade troopers and a few anti-air troopers. Don't go over the top, just a few, and that just strengthens it up against those tech level 3 threats that might be coming your way. Anti-air troopers obviously good against air, but the thing with laser troopers and anti-air troopers and the like is when you get to the high levels, you start to realise they're very squishy. They don't have too many hit points, and that can become an issue when you're being targeted by area effect weapons. Like, it's interesting, the anti-air trooper V's the air cruiser battle because air cruisers have a very, very, very slow rate of fire. So if an air cruiser is fired, and you can just get your anti-air troopers, rush it up to the air cruiser and shoot it down. But if it hasn't fired and you approach the anti-air cruiser, you can end up losing a whole group of anti-air troopers in one shot from an air cruiser. So you have to time things right for that. So moving on to mechs. Strike mechs still good at taking down laser troopers and shooting workers and that kind of thing. Mech destroyers are just great against other mechs. So, like, particularly, you might be fearful once you see your opponent getting assault mechs, the big beasts. But you know what? You don't have to fear assault mechs if you've got mech destroyers, because for their cost, mech destroyers are just great at taking out assault mechs. And if you've got a strong mech destroyer army, you don't even have to worry about your opponent's assault mechs. They're that easy to take down. Assault mechs, ultra slow. They're the big beasts, really, really slow. Big area of effect damage, which is great against a lot of ground units. But the thing with assault mechs is they can also damage buildings as well, and that's significant. So the other mechs can't do that. So if you're attacking an opponent's base and you have assault mechs, they aren't limited to just taking down your opponent's units. They can take down the buildings as well. Transport mechs that are interesting. good at level 3. They're fairly sturdy like mech destroyers, but their attacks somewhere between. It's kind of medium. And whereas the strike mech's good against troopers and the mech destroyer is good against mechs, the transport mech attack doesn't really have a niche as such. It's very generic. Then scouts, we did those before, just really good for scouting. If they're fully upgraded at level 3 and 4 and you have them in groups, you can dash them around, take out workers. If they have a problem with an engagement, just dash them away before they can get shot at again. If your opponent's struggling across the board, you can dash them across the board to help them out. But they're quite weak. But you really can pick and choose the battles you want just because they're so fast, they move so quickly. But they do have to be fully upgraded, otherwise they're useless in battle. I'll leave ships. Jedi. As said, Jedi are good against laser troopers. Jedi Knights can convert things, small things. So, as I said, they can be a bit vulnerable to Mounties, but then you have the opportunity you can convert a Mountie. Okay, and also consider that you can, Jedi Knights and things, you can convert workers, so you can use them to effectively steal your opponent's workers. So they lose a worker and you gain a worker, or multiple ones. And they're melee troops, so you can get within, like with Mounties, you can get within artillery, mech destroyers, assault mech's minimum range. Then where do we start with Jedi Masters? So they're just very much a tougher version of the Jedi Knight with more hit points, but depending on what civ you are, it varies greatly. Like First Order, their versions of them are just kind of very much melee units, but if you're like Republic or something, you've got this massive range of various things you can do. You can make them invisible. You can use them to convert even bigger things. Like there's nothing more satisfying than your opponent coming at you with assault mechs, and then you're using a Jedi Master who's been upgraded suitably to convert that opponent's expensive assault mech to your side. And then obviously they can often convert other Jedi, your opponent's Jedi, you convert them as well. So really, really fun to use. Jedi Masters particularly, because they don't destroy buildings, but you can convert them. So they've got a wide range of uses just because you can convert so many different things. But they're very vulnerable to bounty hunters. Let's go on to that. Won't discuss the unique units. Bounty hunters, they're the thing to use against Jedi in all its forms. Also, bounty hunters really quickly kill other bounty hunters, so that's something to bear in mind as well. They're okay against troopers as well, but the thing is, bounty outside of really killing Jedi, they're not particularly great units. Their range tends to suffer a little bit and the like, and you can't really upgrade them. So I wouldn't really use them for very much more than shooting at range your opponent's Jedi. Cannons, that's the one to use against buildings from range. Being able to shoot from a long way away has many uses. How are we doing? So heavy weapons, got 3 types of heavy weapons. Artillery, lots of range. They, like assault mechs, they can really damage buildings as well, and that burst effect is great against laser troopers and whatnot, but they're very vulnerable to being rushed by melee units like Mounties, as we discussed. The other thing with artillery, it tends to, when I've seen them being used in games, they tend to prioritize buildings in their firing. So if you have them fire at a unit, once they've killed the unit, really, for me, I want them to be carrying on killing the opponent's army, but they go off and start shooting at some random bit of wall or some prefab after that. So you have to really stay on top of what they're firing at. I think artillery, it's a lot of in terms of cost. They use up a lot of Nova, but I think I think they can beat mech destroyers sort of one-on-one. But yeah, mega vulnerable to Mounties just taking them down. Anti-air mobiles, more range than if you're the right civ than anti-air troopers, and they're more sturdy as well. But again, for taking down air units, pummels, it's taking down buildings, isn't it? It's a melee unit. That's the one you want to use if you want to take down walls. Particularly, use your pummels, and enemy fortresses and whatnot. You want to be using pummels. They're dead slow, so sometimes you'll see people load them into, say, air transports, for example, fly them across the board, drop them down, and start taking down buildings with them. So heavy weapons factory got 3 very different types of unit there, and then airbase. After the airbases, that's it. I think we've done it after that. So last one, airbase, air transports for moving things around, dropping them over walls. Particularly, they're kind of useful as well. If you've got units that are really, really, really painfully slow, like cannons or assault mechs or pummels, as we discussed, it can save a lot of time just loading them into an air transport. Don't ask me how things like assault mechs can fit to an air transport. That's just a mystery to me, but they have that use. Interceptor is just very good at taking down other air units. You can use them to pop off workers and that kind of thing, and laser troopers, but it intercepts other air units. That's what they're for. Got good range. They're very, very fragile, but they've got massive range and are very good at taking down other air units. Bombers, their main thing, they can't attack other air units. Their main thing is taking down buildings, and they've got an area effect, so you can use them to hit things like mechs and things, but their main role is taking down buildings. Then fighter, it's a bit more generic than the interceptor. They're not quite as good at taking down other air units as interceptors are, but great for shooting laser troopers, workers. They struggle with something like a Jedi. You can or mechs. They can be firing at like Jedis and mechs forever, and not destroy them to the point where sometimes if I've got a mech army and I've got a few fighters firing at my mechs, I don't even really worry about it. I just ignore them and carry on doing what I'm doing, because it takes so long for them to take your units down. Then we've got the attacker. That's just for hitting ground units. And where is the bomber? That's mainly against buildings. With its area effect, the attacker's more for sort of generically taking down things on the ground. Not so much buildings, I would say, but kind of units. So you name it, troops, mechs, heavy weapons, whatever. The attacker's good for that. So I think that's covered everything. But as I was saying, yeah, it's at 3 and 4. It's about looking at what units your civ is good at, and then getting the right combination of units produced from different factories. So you've got like a generic thing selection of units that can take on anything your opponent can throw at you, and then it's about in the game adapting to what your opponent's building as best you can within that. Okay, so that would do for that one.